If your nervous system feels tired and you're longing for a deeper, more embodied connection with the divine, I'd love to invite you to my free Sacred Intimacy Snapshot. In just a few minutes, you'll discover which area of intimacy in your life is asking for care right now, and you'll receive a gentle 4-part mini course to help you tend to what's next on your journey. You can take it at innerlightcompanion.com. Welcome to the Inner Light Companion, a space to personalize your spiritual journey with the 12 sacred intimacies. I'm Tamara Ridge, your companion and guide. Each episode of this podcast explores a facet of connection with the divine, yourself, others, and the world, offering clear markers to recognize, gentle practices to try, and stories that help you grow what's strong and tend to what needs to grow. Move at your pace and use the name for the holy that fits your heart. This isn't therapy or advice. It's a meeting of souls, a place to listen deeply, ask real questions, and remember the wisdom already within you. I invite you now to take a breath. Let's begin. What if the reason you struggle to say what you really mean isn't that you're bad at communication, but that your voice was trained to disappear long before you ever opened your mouth? If you grew up in a high control religion or in a home where anger, needs, and truth were dangerous, communication intimacy doesn't start with learning better scripts. It starts with healing the places where you learned that speaking honestly was unsafe. Today we're going to talk about what happens when words go missing, when you freeze, people please, or shut down instead of saying what's true, and how to begin repairing communication after a lifetime of silencing. We'll look at what spiritual and relational silencing actually does to your nervous system, how it shows up in your current relationships, and gentle practical ways to start using your voice again in a way that honors your body, your story, and your connection with the divine. This is the Inner Light Companion podcast. I'm Tamara Ridge, marriage and family therapist and spiritual companion, and we're in our series on communication intimacy, sacred listening, and authentic expression. If your throat tightens when it's time to speak, if you rehearse conversations in your head but can't get the words out in real time, or if you've ever left a conversation thinking, why didn't I just say what I really felt? Then this episode is for you. If you're new here, welcome. The Inner Light Companion podcast is a space for post-religious, spiritually hungry humans who still long for a direct, embodied relationship with the divine, but not through fear, perfectionism, or gatekeeping. We're in the second sacred intimacy of the year, communication intimacy, and that's the art of listening and authentic expression with yourself, with others, and with the divine. You don't have to have heard all of the earlier episodes to benefit from this one. But if what I say today lands in your body, I encourage you to go back and listen to the earlier communication episodes in this series, because this is episode 4 before we move on to the next sacred intimacy next week. If you are listening to this podcast and you find yourself thinking, oh, that's me, take a breath. I want to tell you there's nothing wrong with you. There's a story behind why your voice learned to hide. I want to start with a thread that you might recognize. For many of us, the silencing didn't start in our first abusive marriage or even in our first church calling. It started in childhood, long before we had words for abuse or spiritual trauma. Maybe like me, you learned very early that the safest thing you could do was to keep the peace. You scanned the room for emotional weather. You learned to feel other people's expectations before they said a word. You put your needs second to avoid anger, shame, or physical harm. That same pattern followed me into my first marriage. I didn't have language for emotional abuse. I couldn't name what was happening. So I did what I'd always done. I disappeared my own voice to keep the illusion of peace. And then my participation in church took that pattern and spiritualized it. I was taught not to use my own language for the divine, not to talk openly about doubts, not to name abuse in my home if it threatened the image of a sealed, eternal family. Temple covenants layered on top of that childhood silencing, where sacred became another word for unmentionable. What happened in my body in ritual? What happened in my marriage? What happened in my inner life? All of it moved behind a curtain of silence. Even after I left Mormonism, I went to a Catholic priest for counsel about my third husband, a man who presented himself as spiritual, but behind closed doors was deeply abusive. I laid out everything I had endured, and the priest's response was, "You need to go back. God doesn't allow for marriages." He suggested a monastery, a literal covenant of silence over my safety. Let that sink in for a second. Every system in my life had taught me the same message. Silence equals survival. Your voice is dangerous. Your needs are dangerous. Your truth is dangerous. If any part of your story sounds even a little bit like that, if you learned that good meant quiet, agreeable, compliant, it makes profound sense that communication is hard for you now. The problem is not that you don't know how to communicate. The problem is that communication has been wired in your nervous system as a threat. Let's name what this kind of silencing actually does, because until you can see the pattern, you will keep blaming yourself for something that was trained into you. In high control systems, silencing often looks like holiness on the surface. Reverence, modesty, submission, unity. Underneath, it functions as control. Some of the ways that it shows up is in language control, where you're only allowed to use certain words for God, for your own experience, for what counts as spiritual. And if your language doesn't match the group, you're corrected, shamed, or ignored. Also, emotional censorship, where anger, rage, grief, doubt become dangerous emotions. So you learn to smile and bear testimony while your soul screams for something different. Forbidden conversations, because you cannot talk about abusive marriages without disrespecting the priesthood. You can't talk about doctrinal problems without being disloyal to the church. You can't speak honestly about how the temple feels in your body without being seen as the one with the problem. And then there's isolation as discipline. So when you finally do speak, people pull away, friends disappear, community evaporates. Sometimes, like in my story, your child becomes a target for reconversion through someone you trusted. And when you set a boundary, you are the one who gets shunned. Over time, you don't need anyone to silence you. You silence yourself. Your nervous system learns, if I speak, I'll be punished, abandoned, or spiritually condemned. If I stay quiet and agreeable, I'll belong, at least a little, as long as I can ignore my inner questions. So now, years later, you're in a conversation with a partner, with a friend, with your own children. You want to say, this doesn't feel good, or I disagree, or I need something different. And your body responds the way it learned to respond in those earlier systems. Your throat tightens, your heart races, your brain goes foggy, you freeze, fawn, or shut down. That moment isn't communication failure. It's your nervous system saying, speaking has never been safe. Are you sure you want to do this? If this conversation is resonating with you, I want to personally invite you into something new I'm creating and very excited about. I call it the Art House of Sacred Becoming, a body-safe, archetypal art journey for spiritually attuned women who are longing for a deeper becoming. I created it out of a hunger for deeper daily interaction with my highest self, for a place where my inner wise woman, my creativity, and my intimacy with the divine could actually meet in real time, not just in my head. Inside the art house, we use simple, accessible art, nervous system aware practices, and archetypal exploration to help your body feel safe, your soul feels seen, and your creativity have room to breathe. If you're feeling that inner yes as you listen, I'd love for you to join the interest list. Just go to arthouseofsacredbecoming.com and add your name. You'll be the first to know when small circles open, and you'll receive a free Wise Woman Journal prompt so you can begin your own deeper becoming right where you are. Again, that's arthouseofsacredbecoming.com. We cannot heal communication intimacy by adding better scripts on top of a body that still believes it will be punished for telling the truth. We have to start where your body is, not where your mind thinks you should be. Before we go any further, I want to offer a brief practice that you can use anytime you feel yourself freezing in a conversation. If it's safe to do so, you can follow along right now. If you're driving, just listen and file it away for later. I invite you to gently place one hand on your throat and one hand on your heart, the two places that tend to clamp down when you're scared to speak. Take a slow breath in through your nose and exhale slowly through your mouth like a soft sigh. On your next exhale, whisper to yourself, my words are mine. My voice is sacred. Notice any sensation, tightness, heat, emptiness, tears. There's no wrong response. You're just showing your body, I see you, I hear you, I'm not going to force you, and I'm not going to abandon you. You can do this in real time, at the dinner table, in the car, in the bathroom during a hard family gathering. One hand on your throat, one on your heart. Breathe. My words are mine. My voice is sacred. This is the beginning of communication intimacy. Not the perfect sentence, but the relationship between your voice and your nervous system. Now, I want to gently pry apart two things that have probably been glued together in your body: silence and spiritual safety. You were taught, directly or indirectly, that God is served by your quietness, by not questioning, by not speaking ill of the Lord's anointed, by keeping marital abuse between you and your husband, maybe with the bishop, by keeping temple experiences secret even when your body was really rejecting it. You may have also been told explicitly that negative emotion is unspiritual, that anger is of the devil, that grief is a sign of weak faith, that rage means you've lost the spirit. Here's what I've come to know after decades of therapy work and my own reconstruction journey. The divine does not require your silence. The divine does not require your emotional contortion. The divine does not require you to tell a prettier story than the one you actually lived. Your honest voice, even when it's shaking, even when it's angry, even when it's full of doubt, is no threat to God. It's a doorway to intimacy with the divine. Communication intimacy with the divine is not performance. It's the willingness to bring your real words, your real questions, your real grief into that space between you and God. The same is true with people. Any relationship that requires you to silence your story, minimize your pain, or use only approved language for your own experience is not practicing communication intimacy. It's practicing control. You are allowed to have relationships that want your truth, not just your agreement. So let's talk about what rebuilding communication can look like in practical terms. These aren't say this, not that scripts. They're practices that slowly teach your nervous system it is safer now to be honest than it used to be. You can think of them as 3 small steps: notice, name, and nest. Practice 1, notice. Tracking when your voice leaves. So for 1 week, I want you to simply notice when your voice disappears. No pressure to change anything yet, just awareness. You might track things like, when do I agree with something that I don't actually agree with? When do I say it's fine when it isn't? When do I change the subject instead of telling the truth? When do I feel that throat tightening, heart racing feeling and go quiet? At the end of the day, jot down a few bullet points. Today, my voice left when my partner asked what I wanted for dinner. My friend made a joke that hurt, and I laughed instead of saying something. My parents mentioned church, and I shut down instead of saying how I really feel. You're not judging here. You're gathering data. Every time you see one of these moments, you might put a hand on your heart and just say, oh, there you are. That's an old survival pattern. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. Once you've started noticing, the next step is to practice saying one true sentence in low-risk situations. This might sound like, I just need to say I didn't like that. I actually feel a little sad about this. I'm not ready to talk about that right now. I hear you, and I see it differently. You're not debating theology. You're not telling your entire deconstruction story to someone who can't hold it. You're practicing the muscle of one honest sentence leaving your mouth. You can even rehearse it with the divine first. God, this is what I wish I could say. And let yourself speak out loud in prayer or in your journal. If you feel that familiar panic rise up, return to the heart-throat practice. Hand on throat, hand on heart. Breathe. My words are mine. My voice is sacred. Then see if you can still offer one sentence, even if your voice shakes. The third step is nest, creating safe containers for hard conversations. Because your nervous system learned that speaking leads to abandonment or punishment, you need extra safety when you practice new kinds of communication. I call this nesting your conversations, creating a container that feels held. It might look like choosing the setting where you have important conversations at a time of day when your body feels less tired, not in the middle of a family gathering, not at midnight when everyone is already dysregulated. Naming your intention. I want to share something, and my goal isn't to fight. It's to just let you know a little bit more about me. And honoring your stopping point. Give yourself permission to say, I need a pause. I'm noticing my body is overwhelmed. Can we come back to this? You can also nest your communication in spiritual practice. Take a few minutes before the conversation with the divine to sit quietly, place a hand on your heart, and imagine the divine sitting beside you, not as a judge, but as a loving witness to your truth. Ask, help me stay with myself. Help me speak what is mine to speak and let go of what is not. Communication intimacy is not just about what comes out of your mouth. It's about how deeply you stay with yourself while you're speaking. So I'd like to offer you a gentle challenge for this week. Think of it as a very small experiment in communication intimacy. Notice one moment where your voice wants to leave. Pause and do the throat and heart practice. Say one true sentence that you would normally swallow. That's it. You don't have to confront your entire family. You don't have to correct every injustice. Just one moment, one breath, one sentence. Over time, these small acts teach your nervous system something really amazing. I can survive telling the truth. I might even be more connected, not less. And if the response you get isn't safe, if someone uses your vulnerability to shame or control you, That's important data too. It tells you something about them, not about the value of your voice. If this episode is stirring things up for you, if you're realizing how much silencing has shaped not just your relationships with people, but also your relationship with the divine, you don't have to navigate that alone. One way to begin is with my Sacred Intimacy Snapshot. It's a short assessment which helps you see which one of the 12 sacred intimacies is already a strength for you, and where communication intimacy might be asking for your gentle attention. You'll also receive a short series of 4 emails with practices that are tailored to your specific need. You can find the link to that in the show notes. As we close, I would like to invite you to put your hand on your heart one more time if that feels okay. Let these words sink in. Your voice was never the problem. The systems that punished your honesty were the problem. The divine does not need your silence to love you. Your questions, your boundaries, your I didn't like that, your I see it differently, all of that is welcome in sacred space. You are allowed to speak. You are allowed to feel. You are allowed to use your own words for your own experience. The divine has been listening for your real voice all along, not the practiced one, not the compliant one, not the silenced one, the real one. I'm Tamara Ridge, and this is the Inner Light Companion Podcast. If this episode resonated with you, I would love to hear what part of your voice you're reclaiming. Take a moment this week to write down one true sentence you spoke or wish you had spoken. And if you feel comfortable, share it with me by email at tamara@innerlightcompanion.com or through the contact form on my website, innerlightcompanion.com. Your story and your words are welcome here. Until next time, I hope you remember your words are yours, your voice is sacred, and you are never too far from the divine. Thanks for listening. As you step into your day, notice which intimacies stirred for you, and then choose one small practice and let it meet you where you are. You want support? Grab the free Sacred Intimacy Snapshot, and when you're ready, the full Sacred Intimacy Assessment that can guide your next steps. Links are in the show notes. Until next time, walk gently, listen deeply, and trust the light within.